Thank you, Flavia.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
And can you see my first slide?
Yes, sure. You can
Brilliant.
go on.
The IT works. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Flavia, for this. And as Flavia said, this forms part of the Serum 5 project on stakeholder training. Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to have you here this afternoon. So, this is a final checklist really before submitting a proposal that you may have put together or you've helped to put together, but it also will serve a purpose for next year and the year after, that you can use this information to do a checklist at the start of your proposal as well. I will give you a bit of a warning. My slides are always very, very full. The reason I do this is so that it makes sense of the information that you're going to be receiving in a way that you don't really need to hear what I'm saying, and you can use it as an aid memoir for future. So that's why. So anyway, let's get a move on. Before I start, I want to give you some statistics around the Cluster 3 project proposals. So I did some statistics, some data crunching to understand how Cluster 3 proposal had changed with regards scores and inadmissibility and ineligible projects. So the average score for a successful project, that which is put on the main list and is offered for funding, the average scores are increasing. So between 2021 and 2024, FCT, Fighting Crime and Terrorism, Border Management, Cybersecurity, Disaster Resilience, and Strengthening Security through Research and Innovation have all increased the scores. The average scores have increased over the past few years. And as you can see, between half a point and up to SSI, which is a total almost of 2 points. And then also on the reserve list, projects are increasing in scores as well. Cybersecurity and SSRI, as you can see, almost 1.5 points for both of those. And also, I looked at some of the projects that were deemed inadmissible and ineligible between 2021 and 2024. So inadmissible projects has increased as well. And so and ineligible projects also, which means that mistakes are still being made with regards inadmissibility and ineligibility. So there's still some work to be done on training, but what I wanted to stress is that the competition for project proposals, and it is a competition, are getting stronger. It's getting a stronger competition because the scores are increasing. So I think if you can take as many opportunities to learn how to put a proposal together and understand the requirements, that could add to your score, and even half a point makes a big difference. So let's move on to what we mean by ineligible and inadmissible. Well, mainly it's around activities. So projects won't be funded if activities include things like human cloning, genetic modification, and so on and so forth. But really, for cluster 3, it's about not meeting the minimum requirements of the number of partners set out in the code conditions. So that could be for fighting crime and terrorism. The minimum requirement may be 2 or 3 law enforcement agencies. So, people, you can write a really good proposal, but if you fail to meet that eligibility criteria, it will fail at the first hurdle, which seems such a shame. And when it comes to inadmissibility, there are still mistakes being made when it comes to that. So for cluster 3, it's the application is not fully complete and it doesn't contain the right annexes or the supporting documentation. That could be the tables. It's not accessible or printable. It doesn't include exploitation and dissemination plan and a communication strategy. So in some incident situations, projects aren't including those really important pieces of information. It doesn't adhere to the page numbers. And in Part B, it may be that individual consortium partners are named in Part B of the proposal, so which can make it inadmissible. So please be aware of those things that may make your project ineligible or inadmissible. That's really important to understand. So some of the main common mistakes that people make when putting together their project proposal. I did a webinar not so long ago, and there's a link to the YouTube presentation, which is part of a bigger presentation. And so what I've done is based a lot of my checklist around the most common mistakes. I won't go over this list again, but these are the most common mistakes. I did speak to a very sort of seasoned evaluator to get his idea of what mistakes were being made, and these were the most common ones. So hopefully through this presentation today, we'll address some of those really big mistakes. So let's start off with the sections and the numbers of pages which you have to adhere to. So excellence. So we are only going to cover Part B of the project proposal this afternoon, and mainly the three main sections of excellent impact and quality and efficiency of the implementation. So the excellence section should have 18 pages. The impact should have 9 pages, and the Q&E of the implementation should have 17 or 22 for lump sums. So again, please, this is one of the criteria that makes it inadmissible, is that too many pages are put forward, submitted. So also what's really important is to understand how your project has to align with the type of action. So again, please make sure that if you are looking at you are doing a project proposal that is a research and innovation action, you have to be facilitating new knowledge or exploring the feasibility of a new or improved technology, which often requires a proof of concept sort of activities within the project activities. Innovation action is that what produces plans and arrangements for designs for new, altered or improved projects, and often there is an expectation that you would do a validation of those models in a real life situation. A coordination support action has to contribute to the objectives of Horizon Europe and excludes RI activities with the exception of widening participation, spreading excellence. So coordination and support actions are really around building networks and improving, the connectivity amongst practitioners and so on and so forth. And then there's the pre-commercial procurement actions, helps buyers group encourage public procurement of research and developed products. And public procurement of innovation solutions, a PPI, is improve the ability of buyers to have early deployment of innovative solutions. So these are the overarching requirements of the different types of actions. So just check which action you are doing for which your project proposal you're putting forward. So this is one of the checklists. So today, I'm just going to whiz through here some of the things that we're going to be looking at. So with regards to the excellence, we're going to look at the clarity of the objectives and the pertinence of the objectives, the extent of ambition that your project will achieve, how your project will go beyond the state of the art, the quality of the open science, what does that mean? Does your project follow the FAIR principles? Do you have interdisciplinary approaches? Is your methodology sound? And do you include a gender dimension within your project? Is there a requirement for that? Then for the impact, we're going to look at the credibility of the impact pathway, the likely scale and significance of your project, how your expected outcomes and impacts are included in your project, your communication strategy, what does it mean by target audience? We're going to look at the impact canvas and the plan for dissemination and exploitation. And with regards to the Q&E of it, the implementation, we're going to look at the quality of the work plan and the effectiveness. How effective will your work plan be? The tasks and deliverables, Gantt and PERT diagrams, which are, quite important to your project proposal, the IP, the capacity role of each partner, and also the consortium expertise as a collaboration, how they gel together. So these are the main areas we're going to look at today. It's impossible to cover everything within a project proposal, so I've picked out the main elements. So when you embark upon your project proposal, for each of the three sections, there should be a short introduction. So for the introduction checklist for the excellence, so have you offered a clear description of the pertinence of your project's objectives and the extent of ambition? Have you mentioned how it will go beyond state of the art? Have you mentioned the soundness of your methodologies and the concepts and assumptions and the models you're going to use to make so that you allow the evaluator to make sense of what you're doing? Mention about the interdisciplinary approaches, the gender dimension, open science practices, how you will share and manage the research outputs, and how engagement of citizens and civil societies and users will be undertaken where appropriate. However, what I do suggest, and if you've ticked all those things, is do not write any introduction of any of the sections until you've completed the other parts, because it will make it easier to write the introduction as the last point, because then you can call upon all those things and you can make it really compact, your introduction, because what the evaluator wants to read is something that gives him a true idea of what he's going to be reading over the next few paragraphs or the next sections. So you're setting the scene for the evaluator. So let's look at point 1.1, the objectives and the ambition. So have you included, in the objectives part, have you included your plan to what you plan to achieve by the end of the project? Have you said the pertinence to the expected outcomes of the core topic and the expected impacts of the destination? So how is your project going to address those things? Have you mentioned any links with the Horizon Europe strategic plan? And have you provided clarity to the object of your objectives? And the potential actions for this is really to make your objectives SMART, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And we'll have a look at those in a minute. So for your ambition, have you included your aspirations of the significance of the long-term goals? Have you said how your work will go beyond what has already been done, and how the TRLs will progress from the start of the project and how they will progress to the end of the project? So if something comes into a project at TRL 4, then you would expect that TRL to be much more mature at the end of the project. Again, all based around the type of action, because the TRLs are different for different types of actions. So for an innovation action, it's a lower TRL. Sorry, an innovation action is a higher TRL than a research and innovation action. So be mindful of those TRLs and the significance of the actions. So the potential boundaries, the potential actions for this is, so for the ambition part, push the boundaries and raise the bar, set new standards, be transformative, make the differences meaningful, and be groundbreaking within the research and innovation sphere of your project. And so beyond state of the art. So have you included what is already out there? And have you said how the state of the art will be surpassed by your project? Have you mentioned any groundbreaking R&I that you will undertake, and any novel concepts and approaches that you will also take? And for the potential actions on this, so to understand what already is out there in the state of the art, do a little bit of initial research to see what's out there, and then you can make new advancements on the capabilities, the methodologies and technologies of product, service and models, and you can evidence that within your project proposal, and these will be sort of your baselines that you can start off at. So what are the SMART objectives? So have you clearly defined what will be done? Have you included metrics to track the project's progress to determine the success of the project? So, for example, have you said there's going to be a 20% increase in detection of firearms, for example? Are you being realistic given the time, the resources, and the capabilities of the project? It's even being realistic, you still have to remain to push those R&I boundaries, but don't promise something that is going to give you a headache around, oh my goodness, I don't think we can achieve this. So be realistic, because the evaluator will know if you are saying something that really cannot be achieved. And is it relevant? Have you aligned your goals with the call topic's expected outcomes and the expected impacts of the destination and the scope of the call topic? So is it relevant to what the ask is from the Commission? And is it time-bound? Have you set clear deadlines for each of the tasks and each of the deliverables, and obviously the milestones as well? So if you do that for each of your objectives, you will be on a really good path of explaining and covering all the bases for that. So let's look at the 1.2, the methodology. So 4 methodologies. So these are the things you need to be mentioning in part 1.2. Have you included a description of the overall methodologies you're going to be using, and the appropriateness of those methodologies, and how they will help to achieve the objectives you set out in your project? And also, have you included how you will overcome any challenges that you may meet during your work? You know, these may be the risks. Have you also mentioned previous results that will feed into your work? You know, projects that have been completed that you may be building on? And have you also said how your project may link up with work that may be still ongoing even, and that previous work? So for the potential actions under the methodologies, offer up clear, sound and credible processes, offer up robust models, ensure that these are something that works, those things that work and are found to be working already in other projects. Have you produced evidence for your assumptions of the work? Find that data and results from previous work, and build upon that previous work to actually use evidence to say, I've made this assumption because of the previous work, and my assumption is that more work, we could achieve this. Also, the interdisciplinary and the intersectoral approach. Have you included how you will bring together the different expertise from within your consortium, and how you'll bring together those different methods from different disciplines to make sense of it all, and to actually make the data real and meaningful? And have you said how this approach will benefit the work that you're undertaking? And have you given a reasoning for the approach of this interdisciplinary approach? Also, if you're not going to use that approach, have you said why you're not going to use it? It may be that you don't need to, but if you aren't going to use it, give a reasoning why you're not going to use it. So the potential actions for this: combine the different disciplines to achieve a fit-for-purpose solution that addresses the topic challenges, and create a plan that optimises the diversity of the partners. So have you included open science practices? That is a plan that explains how the project research outputs will be shared and the benefits for future researchers otherwise build on the impact of your work. So have you included that open science plan, what you would foresee to happen by sharing your results and your outputs? And to do that, follow the ethos of the FAIR principles, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and put forward a plan to ensure research output is transparent, accessible, reproducible, and published. So what do we mean by the FAIR data principles? This is all about data that's produced by your project. So have you made provision for your data to have a unique and permanent identifier with a clear description of the data so it can easily be found? Have you made plans for the data to be retrievable using the most suitable means available where appropriate? So that's accessible. And have you considered assigning data with a clear, explicit and standardized terminology so it can be easily integrated into other applications? That makes it easy for people to use and reuse. And when we talk about reusable, have you made provision for the data to be available under open licenses with fully documented provenance, or the original ones perhaps, and historic? And so it can be used for future research and impact. So have you followed the FAIR data principles in order to further improve the impact of your work? So all of these things is about how your data can be used. It can be found easily, accessed easily, it can be used again, and it can be integrated into other people's applications for the future. So let's go to continue with the 1.2 methodology. Social sciences and humanities integration into your project. Have you included the role of the SSH expert in your project? Some projects don't require this, but have you made sure that you have make sure that an SSH expert is in your project as a beneficiary, an active partner? And have you said why they are needed to make the project successful? And have you explained how the expert will contribute to the R&I activities, and how the SSH expert will work in unison with other experts within the project? That's if there is a requirement for SSH integration. So the actions is, obviously some topics are flagged with the necessary requirement. Integrate the SSH expert into the project as early as possible. So in one of your early work packages, make sure that the SSH expert is there at the very earliest moment in time of when your project starts. And then ensure that all partners understand the role of the expert as well, and vice versa. So the gender dimension, have you included an explanation of how you have considered the gender dimension in your research and innovation work? This isn't about the gender balance of your consortium. You've got so many women and so many men within your consortium. It's about the gender dimension within your research and innovation. Have you said, if you're not going to have a gender dimension and you've looked at it and thought actually it makes no difference, have you said why it makes no difference and why it's not relevant? You have to, just because you don't think it's relevant, you have to say to the evaluator, I have considered this. However, the reasoning for my omission of this is because. And also say how the project will approach the R&I work with gender lens. So what does that mean? So it means undertake the research to understand the possible implications of gender that may affect your work. For example, you may, if you're putting out questionnaires or surveys, you may get different responses from male and female. You may get different responses due to age and culture, and so on and so forth. Gender dimension is mandatory unless otherwise specified in the work programme. It's not about gender balance of the roles, which I've already said within the team. It's about that research and innovation work and how it may make a difference to your results when asking questions and trying to get the data. So, for example, if you're talking about forensics and you want to understand biometrics, forensic biometrics, does it make a difference that you're asking the questions between men and women? It means you have to look at perhaps previous work that's already been undertaken. So again, do a little bit of research so that you can evidence the reasons why you're going to have a gender dimension or the reasons why you're not going to have a gender dimension. So let's move on to part 2, section 2, impact. Again, don't write the introduction for this section until you've actually completed all the other parts. But as a checklist, have you offered a clear description of the credibility of the pathways to achieve the outcomes and impacts? Have you given a likely scale of your project's contribution and the likely significance of your project's contribution? And we'll move on to scale and significance a bit in a little while. Have you mentioned about the suitability of the work to maximise the outcomes and impacts? And have you mentioned about the dissemination, exploitation and communication plans and the quality of those plans as well? So that's what you would, as a teaser for the evaluator, is if you put those little pieces of nuggets, information nuggets into your introduction, then you're drawing in the evaluator to want to read more. But again, don't write it until you've completed the other sections. And if you can tick all of those things, then you're not doing too badly. So 2.1, the project's pathway towards impact. So expected outcomes and expected impacts. Have you included a description of how the project results are expected to make a difference? Another word for impact in the medium and long term. So the medium term is during the lifetime of the project, and the long term, which are the wider impacts, is the impacts beyond the duration of the project. So have you included this within 2.1? And obviously the actions address the expected outcomes that are specified in the core topic, and also address the expected impacts that are specified in the destination of the project proposal, that it falls under that fighting crime, terrorism. So have you addressed those expected impacts? Do not copy and paste the expected outcomes and expected impacts into your proposal and use them as your objectives, but do use these outcomes and impacts to construct your project objectives. Be specific about the work of your project based on the expectations. So target audience, have you provided a description of your specific target audiences or audience that will reap the benefits from your project? For example, law enforcement, border personnel, citizens organisations, scientists, the list goes on. What is your target audience? Only you will know that. And so identify your target audiences really quite early on. Ensure the target audience is relevant to your project. So if it's about child sexual exploitation, then your target audience are those working within child sexual exploitation and not from drugs and so on and so forth, unless there is a true connection between the two. And break the target audiences down into smaller groups, such as areas of interest or segments of society. So, for example, if you say my target audience is law enforcement, then you could break that down again into those working at the front end of drug detection and investigations. And the types of impact, have you mentioned about the relevant impacts pertinent to your project, such as scientific impact, economic, technological impact, or societal impact? I'm going to go into that a little bit later on. And so for each of the target audiences, Please say which ones will be affected by which types of impact. So what are the types of impact? So there's the scientific impact. Have you included how your project will contribute to scientific advances and go on to create further impacts? Have you got an economical impact? Have you included how your project may, for example, bring new products, services, business processes to the market to increase efficiency, decrease costs, increase profits, contribute to standard setting, etc., etc.? And have you got a technological impact? Have you included how your project will contribute to, for example, improve efficiency, make something faster, smaller, or cheaper? And then there's a societal impact. Have you included a societal aspect impact in which you're going to be making people safer and more secure and improving their lives? Really think about this, because everything that you write down, all the impacts will add to your project proposal. And it might get you that extra half a point or 1 point that actually elevates it from not being funded to being funded. So this is the value of your project. So let's look at the 2.1 project's pathway towards impact. Impact is so, so important. It's probably the most important part of your project when it comes to the evaluation. So we talk about scale, so how widespread is your project going to reach? Have you provided an informed estimation of the scale of your expected outcomes and impacts on the target audiences or the groups? And have you provided a description of how widespread the scale is likely to be over time? So actions for this is say which specific target audience will benefit and how many will benefit. So how many will benefit from your work? You can calculate this and you could say numbers or percentages and use reliable data. And you can actually use baselines to provide an initial measurement of your starting point for the project. So that's your in-project measurement of change and success. And you can also use benchmarks. So provide details of what others are doing at this moment in time, because then you can measure your success against other bodies. So baselines are like your internal measurement of your project, how well your project is doing, and your benchmarks are about measuring it against your success against others. So use those statistics and data, have a look and have you included that? And then we're talking about the significance of your project, the importance. Have you provided an informed estimation of the importance of the benefits that will be to your target audience? So provide details of, for example, efficiency savings, reduction of time through improved processes. And then we're looking at the barriers and achievements. Have you included the potential barriers or obstacles that may occur to hamper achieving your expected outcomes and impacts? And the potential, and have you included potential achievements that may occur due to your project? So if you're putting out some data, the results, how will that help to achieve more impact beyond the duration of your project? I do want to say they are estimations, but your estimations have to be founded in things that have gone on before, so you can extrapolate that. And identify the obstacles. This could be user behaviour, the markets, the changing market, the public resistance to change, regulations, legislation and standards. So they may be your obstacles. And how will you address the identified barrier obstacles? The mitigation measures. Provide a good management strategy to address the potential obstacles, e.g. proactive risk assessments and ownership of risks, and stakeholder and public engagement. So let's have a look at the pathway towards impact. So this is your checklist. Have you created an impact pathway? So this is about bringing all those things we've mentioned together. So have you looked at the expected outcomes of the core topic that have to be realised over the short term within the project? And have you included the expected impacts of the destination realised over the long term of the project after the project duration? And have you used these to formulate your project objectives? And for these, have you identified your target audiences? And then going on from that, do your target audience need to be subgrouped into smaller groups to ensure that your target audience is definitely that, as I say, law enforcement. It could then be broken down into those working within the drug area or firearms and so on and so forth. Does it need to be subgrouped? And then for each of those target audiences, you need to mention the short-term impacts and outcomes for each of them. So you may have a number of target audiences and the impacts and outcomes may be different for each one. Have you included that? And then have you also mentioned the long-term impacts and outcomes of that target audience? Very important, because as I say, the long-term and the short-term impacts and outcomes can be different for each target group. And then for each of these target groups, have you said the scale? Have you estimated the scale? Have you said how widespread the outcomes and impacts will be in terms of the size of the target group or the proportion of that group and how they will benefit? And also the significance for each of the groups. Have you said how important and the value of the benefits, e.g. number of hours saved, the cost savings? So these are estimates and assumptions because nobody can see into the future, but you do have to say within your project proposal, you have to say the scale and the significance that you intend to attain. But to do that, you have to quantify and strengthen your estimates and assumptions of scale and significance using relevant and reliable data, statistics, baselines and benchmarks. So you can use things that are already out there. Have you mentioned the potential barriers? And have you provided details of the mitigating measures? And have you also mentioned the further requirements that will contribute to the achievement of the project? So this is, use this, you can actually use this and write in your own ideas for your project. It makes sense. It helps to make sense of what the pathway looks like. So let's move on to the dissemination, exploitation and the communication plans. Please remember the D&E plan is an admissibility condition. It's there, it's a legal requirement unless the topic explicitly states otherwise. If your proposal is selected for funding, you will need to provide a more detailed plan for dissemination and exploitation and the communication activities. So your proposal needs to say what your plans are. It doesn't have to go into the biggest of detail, but be prepared for success, because if you are offered funding, then you will need a much more detailed plan for these activities. You will need to provide this as a mandatory project deliverable within 6 months of signing the grant agreement. And obviously the plan may need to be periodically updated and remain aligned with the project's progress. So your checklist is, have you included a first version of your plan for the dissemination exploitation, including communication activities? Have you described the dissemination measures, the exploitation and communication measures that are planned? And have you included the target groups to be addressed, the scientific community, end users, etc.? Let's look a little bit, let's make a little bit more sense. So have you stated the what, the who, the why, and the impact? So the results produced by your project and utilised by stakeholders in order to generate different types of impact through dissemination, exploitation and communication. But I think sometimes people get a little confused about what is the difference between them all, really. So dissemination is for further utilization of your project results. Exploitation is to further the research and innovation activities, and communication is to promote the project itself. But who are we doing that for? So dissemination is for the scientific communities and the professional organisations. Exploitation is for policymakers, industry, standard organisations, so on and so forth. And communication is for the general public and the media. They're the ones that you're promoting to the outside world about the Horizon Europe project. So why? Why are we doing this dissemination, exploitation, and communication? So for dissemination, it's about open science. It's producing new and high quality knowledge and strengthening the future of research and innovation. Exploitation is about leveraging investment, generating growth, commercial exploitation, creating a service, more jobs, better jobs. And communication is about addressing policy priorities, delivering tangible benefits and strengthening uptake. And then the impact. So what is the impact? So the impact for dissemination is the scientific impact, exploitation is your technological and economical impact, and your communication is your societal impact. Although saying that, there is linkages between them. So again, have you really thought how this works? And we'll just go over measures to maximise impact. So dissemination is plans on how others can utilise your project results. For all those that can learn from the data and build upon, it has to be, dissemination should be done as soon as possible within your project. And you can do that through databases and scientific journals. So your exploitation is how you plan your plans to further research and innovation activities for those working in commercial, political arenas, societal arenas. And often the exploitation happens near to the end and beyond the duration of the project. And these can be through prototypes and feasibility studies. And your communication is your plans on how you will promote your project to the public and media. This will happen throughout your project, and you can do that through websites, newsletters, activities such as webinars as well. So let's do a checklist for the impact canvas. You will have seen within your project proposal an impact canvas, and recently spoke to somebody about the impact canvas, and they really like to see the impact canvas within the project proposal. So there's 6 areas of the impact canvas, because then the evaluation gets a really good overview of what you intend to do within your project. So there's the specific needs. So what are the gaps and what is needed? So have you said something that is going to be faster, smaller, more effective, more efficient, improved, more cost effective? But you've got to know what is out there now and do your research and provide evidence that you know the present situation. So that's under specific needs. Your expected results box is what you expect to generate by the end of the project. So your checklist will be what gap your project will fill. Is it something that a new service, a new product, a new training model, new systems, new documents? What will be the difference between the present and the future? And why, and evidence why something new is needed. Why are you doing this work? Justification. And then you've got your dissemination, exploitation, and communication measures. So what will you be doing? What measures will you apply to the results? Exploitation, as we've mentioned before, these are the sort of things that you would put into this box. Know the difference between the D, E, and C measures, and apply each of the measures to reach out to the specific recipients. We've already mentioned the different types here, but this is what you would put into your impact canvas. So your target groups, we already mentioned the target groups, who will use to further uptake the results of the project, who will benefit from the results of the project. So these could be police forces, border force, first and second responders, local government, administration, policymakers, companies, industry, scientific community. You will know who will benefit from your project. Think about the core topic participation criteria required for your topic. So if you are going to use target groups like law enforcement, then have them as they're your criteria. You have to have them within your project to ensure that the solution that you're building is fit for purpose based on their needs, their specific needs. So what policy documents are relevant to your project, target the right companies and target the right scientific discipline. And the outcomes. So what change do you expect to see after successful dissemination and exploitation of project results? And there's your checklist there as well. Be bold about your expectations. Make this a joint effort between the whole of your consortium and make sure it's the expected outcomes of the core topic. And then the final area is your impacts. What are the expected wider scientific, economic and societal effects of the project contributing to the expected impacts outlined in the respective destination in the work programme? So this is about your impacts. So the first one's expected outcomes and the impacts. Again, be bold about your expectations, make this a joint effort, and it's the expected impacts of the destination. So within your impact canvas, again, you can use this as an aid memoir to tick off what you might need to put within that canvas. So we now move on to part 3, implementation. Again, a nice short introduction. Have you offered a clear description of the quality of the work plan, the effectiveness of the work plan, any risk assessments, the appropriateness of the effort assigned to work packages, a justification for the overall resources used, the capacity and role of each partner, and how the consortium's expertise will work together as a whole, how they will come together to, to build a team. Again, if you can check all of those things within your introduction, that's a good thing. Again, write this section, the introduction section, last of all. So a work plan and resources, what do you include under 3.1? So you have to offer, or have you included, a logical structure of the work, the stages of the work set around the work packages, the right number of work packages, appropriate for the size and complexity of the project. And I know there are a number of people out there going, well, how many is the right number? Between 6 and 8 it usually is, but that is an average, but it could be less, it could be more. And then complete all the tables that are relevant to the structure and the work packages. So for the work packages, have you included, the work packages are like smaller projects within a project, and each work package must have a set of tasks. They should have a list of resources that are needed to meet the project's objectives and produce the deliverables. You should have a single work package for project management. If you don't, the evaluator will say, well, who's doing this work? Who's bringing this all together? So it is advised to have a single work package for project management and for looking after the budgets and, the document, making sure the documentation is all kept in a logical way. And also a single work package or major task for dissemination, exploitation, and communication strategies. And there should be a visibility within a work package for a task of a DMP, which is a data management plan. And you should have a suitable title and obviously a number for your work package. What do I mean by a suitable number? And it should be sort of, it should be a timeline of flow. So if your work package is you've got your work package for project management, next one will be perhaps to research into something, or surveys, or how you're going to connect with those people to understand what the needs are. And then further on in 3.1, tasks within the work package. For each task, provide a description of the activities. Have you included that? And a quantification of the activities. Have you stated who will do the activities? And have you said how many person months it needs to be for each person doing that work? Have you said the qualifications that make that person right for the activities? And have you explained why the work is needed in the project? And have you included a task number? So T 2.1, so T task 2 is work package 2 and task 1. And you usually do the tasks in order of when they're going to be carried out. And it will be the same for the deliverables, a list of deliverables for each of the work packages associated with the work program tasks, a list in order when they are to be delivered, and have you included the right numbering convention for the deliverables, e.g. D deliverable 4.2, for example. So deliverable from work package 4 and it's deliverable 2. It just makes sense, and it helps the evaluator to keep track of the work. So remember the actions. You must include a data management plan as a distinct deliverable within the first 6 months of the project. You must include a plan for dissemination and exploitation, including communication activities, again within the first 6 months of the project. The DMP will evolve during the lifetime of the project in order to present the status of the project's reflections on data management. You can find a template for the plan, and that's online manual in the funding and tenders portal. Complete the tables 3.1c, the list of deliverables, and use the correct codes for the types of deliverables. So it could be a document, it could be an activity or something like that. So there is a reference for the type, a code reference for the type of deliverable. And also there's a code for the level of dissemination, whether that be public, or if it's in the public domain, then you write public, or it could be sensitive, in which you wouldn't share that data. And also use month numbers for deliverable dates, where M1 is the project start date. So for a deliverable, you could say M6, we will deliver that by month 6 of the project. So capacity of participants within the consortium, this is really important as well. In 3.2 of your implementation, have you included a description of the consortium, for example, how it relates to the project's objectives, how it brings together the required disciplines, how it brings together interdisciplinary expertise, how the SSH expert, social sciences and humanities experts, will be incorporated into the work with others, how the open science and gender aspects will be incorporated into the work, how each partner complements each other, and a justification for their involvement, and which infrastructures will be accessed by the consortium. You know, these might be a database of things, and a collection of documentation and things like that. It could be if you're doing sort of proof of concept, where you're going to do that, who's going to supply that. If you're going to do validation in real life situations, who's going to be assisting with that? Where will those sites be? So what are those critical infrastructures that you're going to need? And the actions do not mention individual partners as detailed in Part A of the project proposal. So don't mention people by name, but use their short name, the organisation short name. For example, mine is Innovate UK, it's IUK. My name is not mentioned within the project proposal. So also, if you've got AI systems and techniques, and you're going to be using these, it has to follow the digital future documentation. So it has to have technical robustness, social robustness, and it has to be reliable. So technical robustness, you've got to be mindful of prevention of harm, reduction of risks, and minimising harm, and resilient to attack and fallback safeguards. It needs to be socially robust, so ensure you've made consideration for human beings and the environment, and there has to be no impact on social relationships or on what is perceived to be well-being. And it has to be reliable, so it has to work correctly in any given situation or environment, and it has to ensure physical and mental integrity of the human. There's a link there for the document to understand. So if you are producing AI systems or techniques, have a look at that document and familiarise yourself and make sure you've mentioned these three things within your project proposal. Also, intellectual property. This is a really important element of the implementation plan. Provide a strategy for the management of intellectual property, say how IP assets will be protected. They could be contracts, they could be technological licenses, they could be agreements, and say how disputes may be dealt with. Identify owners of IPR of the exploitable results, and include, and if you are dealing with intellectual property, include a budget for IP. So, the work plan. Does your work plan bring together all the elements mentioned in excellence and the impact section? So your implementation part is basically, so in the excellence and impact part, you've mentioned all the things you're going to do. And so the implementation is that which actually brings it all together. So, and it's really essential for your proposal to have a quality and efficient work plan. So does your work plan include a set of work packages, typically between 6 and 8? Have you a distinct work package for project management and for D, E and C activities? Although if not a dedicated work package, at least a dedicated task that covers all those areas. And have you an individual task for management of data? So for your work package elements, have you included a title, a work package description, and the objectives, description of work, a set of tasks, who the lead partner is, who the other participants are, their roles, why the work is needed, and who will do it? And you need to do that for every single work package. And then to do that, have you completed all the tables related to the work packages? There are other tables that are mainly related to budgets, but this, I'm not venturing on that. It's different for every project. So have you completed properly all the tables? Have you included a set of tasks for each work package? And have you included a set of deliverables for each work package? And are the deliverables linked to the tasks? So you could have a task that is 2.1, but a T 2.1. So you could have a deliverable that is D 2.1. And it actually helps the evaluator to bring together or understand, oh, this task, this deliverable is related to this task, related to this task. Have you included a PERT chart, a program evaluation review? It's a visual representation of how the project's tasks and work packages interlink. And it's something that just shows the evaluator how you have thought, your thought process of how each of the work packages may interact with each other. It's not always a linear approach. It doesn't, just because work packages 1 is at the front and work package 2 is the next one, doesn't necessarily mean that they follow each other, because you could get 2 work packages talking to each other throughout the whole of the project. So a great illustration of that helps the evaluator to understand that you understand those interdependencies. And the PERT chart is often something, well, it's in the project proposal and it remains a static thing. However, have you included a Gantt chart? This is something that can actually show the timelines, the start and end points, and duration and dependencies of each task. It helps teams to track the progress of the schedules, the milestones, and deliverables. And actually, the Gantt chart can actually be changed. So, but if you produce a Gantt chart for the evaluator, have you included that to show that, again, your work plan is really well thought out? And then have you included other graphics? Have you broken up all those words within your project proposal? And you can make your project more interesting. A picture paints 1,000 words. It grabs the attention of the evaluator. It makes it memorable. And sometimes a picture is better than words. And have you got a great logo for your project as well? All these things help to for your proposal to stay in the mind of the evaluator. So thank you for your attention and good luck with your proposal. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zail. If you have some questions, you can raise your hand or simply use the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to share my screen for the last part of the training. Okay, just a second. I've seen a question for you, Zail. What is the recommendation number of work packages in a lump sum proposal? You are muted, Zail.
I beg your pardon. I turned it off too quickly. Lump sums may have a few extra work packages, but again, you don't make it too unruly, because the more work packages you have, work packages around about tasks, but I do understand lump sums work differently to those upfront budgets. So make sure that you've got there are no set rules for this, because it depends on the work you're going to do, the number of consortium members you have, the number of actions and activities you're going to do, but just make it appropriate. I am not even going to attempt to tell you how many you should have. It's something you'll know when it's too many, and you'll know when it's too less, because you have to ensure that all the actions, so you can create actions and activities that you can bring together, but there are some that don't fit in with that. So again, yes, lump sums are a little bit more complicated than other ones. Sorry, I couldn't answer that really.
It's not easy to address this kind of questions.
No.
I know. There is another question. There is a hand raised, please, from Ukraine, I guess.
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
I'm NCP from Ukraine. I have a question, similar question about tasks, and my question, specific question about Gantt chart. I faced this situation when logical consequences, how structure the work packages, not like one ended and second beginning, and then second ended, third beginning. So they covered, majority of them covered almost all project period. Did it assess it in the bad way or not? What the general recommendation? Should we restructure or reorganize with logical consequences?
Okay, thank you for your question, Alexei. Yeah, I think look, we know work packages don't work linearly. They don't happen one after the other. However, what is suggested is that you try your work packages. So say work package 1 is your project management, work package 2, and then work package 3. Even though they're in numerical order, doesn't necessarily mean that they will be in order of when things happen. However, it is advised to try and put the work packages in some order. But then, so for example, if you're going to be undertaking within your project proposal a literature review or some research, that would make sense. You would do that first, and that would be an earlier work package. However, it may be that you may need to review that literature review, may need to redo it again, but you have to put it in some sort of order. But by using the PERT chart, you can also show that the interdependencies between each of the work packages. So that will explain how actually work package 2 may feed into work package 4 and work package 5. I was in a project that actually the work package that I was in fed into work package 3, but then work package 3 fed back into me as well. So you have to put it into some logical thing, and the evaluator knows that it's not always happens one after the other as it, but try and make sense and make it a storyline. Have I answered that okay?
Yes, thank you. It's answered.
Okay.
Story is the best answer.
Yeah.
Any other question? Okay. If not,
Well, there is one in cluster 3. Several projects will work with classified data and
okay.
info.
Please.
Okay. Yes. You're absolutely right. So there's things within some data will be EUCI, which is EU classified information, and also sensitive. And there is background data and foreground data. Background data is classified information that you may use as part of your project, and foreground data is something that the project may produce. You will have to, you have to be very careful when you're talking about classified information and sensitive data, because you really want to ensure that you're not raising the classification level too high that you will then have to put in some mitigation measures to protect that data. Can I just say that there is a webinar on YouTube that deals with appraisal process, the security appraisal process, which really goes into depth, and I think if you go into that, because it's on the CERN 5, I think it's on the CERN 5 website, or if you type into YouTube security appraisal process, there is a good explanation of the things you need to take into consideration when you're dealing with sensitive and EU classified information. I do advise you go and have a look at that. Thank you. Thanks, Valerie. Valeria.
I'm going to send in the chat the link of this training. It's in our CERN 5 YouTube channel, as well as other trainings we had. But specifically, this training was really comprehensive on this issue. So I would like to stress the importance of this training again. There is another question, Zeyla, about IP. Would it be disadvantage to collaborate with third-party countries, though eligible for funding, and create tools if sensitive data from EU customs would flow through these tools? Would that lower chances of acquiring funding, innovation action, civil security for society? Specifically, is it crucial for such tools that IP is in EU member states?
Again, it's depends on the IP. It depends on the types of partners you have. It's something. Look, there is lots of information. You have to manage IP. What you need to do is put into place something that will ensure that all the consortium partners know the situation with regards IP, especially around the exploitation results. Again, there is so much information out there about IP, and you'll find that on the Funding and Tenders portal. If there is something really specific, as I say, put something in place to start off with and ensure all the partners agree to that. But if there's something more specific that a partner is requiring, then what I would suggest you do is talk to your country's NCP that deals with, you know, the legislative side of things. And if you are in any doubt, please do inquire on the Funding Intenders portal using the inquiry desk, you know, because you need to make sure right from the beginning your IP is protected, not just for the project, but for all members of the consortium. Doesn't lower your chances, no. No. As long as if you've got a good plan and you can show the evaluator that you've got a plan in place, in fact, that would make it would go towards being a good thing.
Thank you, Zail. Now I'm going to, for the sake of time, to going to the last part of the training. If you agree, thank you again, Zail. This was a useful overview and checklist on how to submit a proposal and, let's say, on the crucial points you should look at. And now for maximum 10 minutes, so it's not a lot of time, I would like to present you the let's say the reason why we are here today, and which is the project under this training. This training opportunity has been organized indeed under the SEREN5 project. I'm Flavia from APRE, the Italian Agency for the Promotion of European Research in Italy. And I'm the coordinator of this project. The SEREN5 project is the Cluster 3 network of NCPs. NCPs are the national contact points for Horizon Europe. Specifically, this project is the network of European national contact points in Cluster 3. Some general information about the project. The project started in September 2022. It was supposed to end in August 2025, but we have received an extension, so we will be active until the proposal submission, so in November, but also until December 2025. So we will be at your support until the end of the year. Our consortium is composed by 16 project partners. This is the geographical composition, and Zail indeed is part of the SEREN5 consortium representing UK. SEREN5 is about to support on one side the knowledge and capacity of the Cluster 3 national contact points on one side. On the other side, it's a big part of our work is aimed to raise the average quality of submitted proposal in Cluster 3 and to provide applicants with the support you need as potential applicants in Cluster 3. Support in terms of training opportunities and to also make aware you about the funding opportunities in Cluster 3. In this slide, you can see a summary of our main services for you as Cluster 3 stakeholders and potential applicants. Going into some details, some specification of such activities, we are the main organizer of together in close cooperation with DG Home and RIA of the European Information Day, the official one, and in conjunction we usually organize the brokerage event. As you know, brokerage events are really useful for you to create networks and to create new consortia. So we are strongly committed in organizing such events. So the Information Days, as you know, are the main occasion to listen and to know which kind of funding opportunities there are now in Cluster 3, but in general in Horizon Europe, and brokerage events are organized for networking purposes. Furthermore, we developed during Seren 5, but also in the previous edition of Seren, the Serema Partner Search Tool. Is a database for your networking, but I will show you some slides in few minutes. We are also strongly committed in organizing trainings such as the one we have here today, trainings for improving your skills in Horizon Europe, specifically in Cluster 3, but also in horizontal issues that can affect your proposal preparation in Cluster 3. Then we usually cooperate with the big operators with big bodies in the civil security field, such as CERIS, EARTO, EOS, EXO, and so on and so forth. And we are also in the organizational team of the SMIG event. Last but not least, we have a good presence at the communication dissemination level. So you can reach us through our website, our social medias. We have a newsletter in which you can also subscribe through our website. And then we collaborate and cooperate with the EN advisors. So with a focus on supporting the small and medium-sized enterprises. As already said, we have developed a very useful database, a platform called the Security Research Map. This platform will and now is supporting the networking chances between different actors, the research side, so the research facilities, the universities, but also the public authorities, suppliers and security solutions, and users and practitioners, because as you know, they are quite fundamental in Cluster 3, and also the industry part, as well as the small and medium-sized enterprises. The Security Research Map is now populated with more than 1,500 people inside that you can filter following these criteria. So on the basis, sorry, there is someone with the microphone open. If you can mute. Okay, I've done by myself. Sorry, I muted someone. So now we have more than 1,500 people inside, divided by areas of activities, organization type, the countries, and so on and so forth. So you can use the filter to reach them out and start a conversation through the platform. You can also organize online meetings through the platform. So I know that the submission deadline is really close. But if you still need a partner for your proposal, you can also consider to check the platform if there is someone interested to join you for your consortium. As Zale already said, we have organized a useful training on the Horizon Europe security appraisal procedure last year in October. It was really, really comprehensive, really useful for the specific issue. But going to our Seren 5 YouTube channel, you can find other trainings that we have already organized, as well as the info days, specifically the pre-info days we have organized at the beginning of this year, with the participation of the European Commission. So I strongly recommend you to check our YouTube channel for our different kind of content, such as the training we had about the SSH integration into cluster 3, but also the pitch training that can help you in prepare a pitch presentation. This slide only to give you a screenshot of the cluster 3, the last cluster 3 info day and brokerage event we have organized, and the last on-site training we have organized in Brussels, back to back with the info day, about the AC instrument, but also the legal and financial considerations in cluster 3, where we have discussed about the lump sum and the FSTP management in cluster 3. It was really useful, and for this training you can find in the DGO YouTube channel the recording of the training. It was really useful for the legal and financial aspect in cluster 3. This slide only to share with you some photo of our teams at work during the info days or during our internal activities during the consortium meeting. This slide to share with you the link of the website. You can check the website whatever you want for insight, news and events in cluster 3, and you can also reach us through my personal email, but also using the SEREN5 email that you can find also in the invitation to this training. Having said that, I would like to thank all of you for your participation. I don't know if you have questions. In any case, you can reach me and Zail and the SEREN5 team wherever you want. We are at your disposal to support you, especially in these final days before the submission deadline. I know these weeks can be really crazy because we are in the middle of finalizing the last part of the proposal. So we are really in support of you as cluster 3 applicants. I would like to remind you that we have recorded the training. So if you miss some parts or you want to refresh your information, the information Zail shared, you can rewatch the recording, the video afterwards. We will update the video, we will upload, sorry, the video into the YouTube channel of SEREN5, and we will share with you the presentation shared by Zail. So thank you very much again, Zail, because it's always really useful for everybody listen to your trainings. And I wish you a good evening and good luck for the proposal submission.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Flavia. Bye.
Bye-bye.